So when a child gets an ADHD diagnosis, it can really shake up the whole family. And, some of the trickiest conversations often happen between parents and grandparents. It can create this generational divide that's just plain tough. But what if all that friction could actually become a way to connect? In today's Explainer, we're going to dive into how to do just that. A grandparent has this really special, almost magical place in a family. But when a grandchild has ADHD, that role it becomes absolutely critical. And really, there are two very different paths a grandparent can choose to walk down.
And this is where the rubber meets the road. A grandparent can step up and become a superhero, that calm, steady force of unwavering support. Or they can become another source of stress, a really heartbreaking part of the whole problem. The path they pick, it can literally change everything for that child and the entire family.
Now, this isn't just some abstract idea, right? This plays out in living rooms and at dinner tables every single day. Let's take a look at a real-world example from an online forum that just perfectly captures this painful generational clash. Okay, so this is from the grandmother's point of view. She's looking at her 6-year-old granddaughter who's struggling, and what she sees isn't a symptom. She sees a kid who's being manipulative. From her perspective, this ADHD diagnosis is just an excuse, a crutch that's going to hold her back for life. And then you have the mom's side, and you can just feel the pain here. She's saying, look, I'm not making excuses for her. I'm trying to empower her. She wants to give her daughter the tools to understand her own mind, to navigate a world that isn't always easy for a neurodivergent kid, without ever making her feel like she's broken.
And listen, the point here isn't to pick sides. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about a huge gap in understanding. The grandmother sees defiance that she thinks needs to be disciplined, but the mother sees a child struggling with classic ADHD challenges, things like emotional regulation, which is just a fancy way of saying it's hard to handle big feelings, and a brain that is literally wired to push back when it feels overwhelmed.
So, okay, how do we fix this? How do we build that bridge? Well, a lot of the time, the key is to unmask what ADHD really looks like, especially in girls. Because, let me tell you, it's often a world away from the stereotype we all have in our heads. This right here is where so much of the misunderstanding kicks in. The stereotype, which is mostly based on boys, is that hyperactive kid, right? The one bouncing off the walls. But for so many girls, it's the total opposite. It can look like daydreaming. Instead of blaming everyone else, they turn it inward and feel this deep sense of shame. And that hyperactivity? It might come out as being super talkative or having these really big reactive emotions. And because they're not causing a scene, their struggles often go completely unnoticed. And here's the thing. Because girls are often trying so hard to be what society expects, neat, agreeable, cooperative, they pour a ton of energy into masking their symptoms. They build this thing experts call a facade of competence. But behind that mask, they are stressed out, anxious, and just plain exhausted from the effort of trying to seem normal. And this quote, wow, it's from a 12-year-old girl, and it just hits you right in the gut. It shows you the real emotional cost. When a girl sees all her friends handling school and friendships just fine while she's struggling so hard, she doesn't think, oh, my brain works differently. She thinks something is wrong with me. And that is where these really deep problems with self-esteem start to take root. All right, so we get it. We see the conflict. We understand the why behind it. So now for the big question, what do we do about it? How can a family actually start forging a new path and build that bridge of support? It all starts with some really practical, collaborative strategies. You know those moments, right? When emotions just explode. That can be one of the toughest parts. A fantastic tool to have in your back pocket is something called the time apart method. The idea is brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of letting an argument spiral, you have a pre-planned signal to just hit pause. It gives everyone space to cool their jets before trying to solve the actual problem. So here's how it works in 3 simple steps. First, when everyone's chilled out, you all agree on a signal. It could be a word, a hand gesture, whatever. Step 2, when things get heated, someone uses the signal and you separate for at least half an hour. No ifs, ands, or buts. This lets everyone's brain literally recalibrate. And finally, step 3, you come back together later and talk about the issue with much clearer heads. The secret here is that it's about teamwork, not punishment. Okay, so managing the meltdowns is one piece of the puzzle. But the other huge piece, it's all about building that child's self-esteem back up. And the words we use are so, so important. Girls with ADHD need to hear these messages on repeat. They need to know deep in their bones that you will always have their back, that getting help is their right, not some special favor, that other people do not get to decide what they're worth, that it's more than okay to stand up for themselves, and that no, they are not alone. And here's another pro tip when it comes to talking with them. Vague praise, you're such a great kid, it often just bounces right off. It feels empty to a kid who internally feels like they're failing. So get specific. Praise the effort. Say something like, wow, I was so impressed with how you kept trying on that math problem, even when it got frustrating. That kind of honest, specific feedback is what builds real, solid confidence. Okay, so let's bring it all home. Remember how we started by talking about being a superhero grandparent? We've looked at the challenges, we've got some new tools in our belts, so how does a grandparent actually become that superhero? It's all about building that unique connection, totally free of judgment. And the secret sauce? It's not complicated. It's found in simple, shared activities. Things that aren't about performance or grades. It's about connection. Going for a bike ride, getting messy with paints, baking cookies, telling stories from when you were a kid, or just exploring in the backyard. It's all low-pressure, one-on-one time that builds that incredible bond. And you know what? This right here, this is the grandparent's superpower. Parents are so often stuck in the weeds, the homework, the chores, the did you brush your teeth grind. But grandparents, they have the freedom to be outside of all of that. They can be the safe harbor, the one place where that child feels 100% loved and accepted, exactly as they are. When you boil it all down, this is what it's all about. Think about it. In a world where a kid with ADHD is constantly feeling judged by teachers, by friends, even by themselves, a grandparent who offers that non-judgmental support, that's not just a blessing, it's a lifeline. Seriously. So at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway has to be this. Your grandchild's brain isn't broken. It's not flawed. It's not less than. It's just different. And getting that is the first giant leap. What you do next? Well, that's a choice. A choice to learn, to adapt, and to connect. So I'll leave you with this question. How are you gonna choose to connect?